Hey again, guys. Again, we've got another real quick one. But remember, if this is something you struggled with last year, you can spend a little more time on it to make sure that you understand it. If you got this last year, you can fly through this pretty quick. Today we're going to look at ordering decimals. So basically putting them in order from either least to greatest or greatest to least. And the big thing to remember there is to pay attention to the directions. Which way am I asking you to order them? So basically, how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to compare the numbers that are in the same place value. That's the trick. And what we want to remember is that just because a decimal is longer, it has more decimal places in it, does not necessarily make it a bigger number. All right? So keep that in mind. It might be bigger, but it doesn't have to. So you'll notice is I've given us a problem here. And what I've done is I've underlined the place values with the same color. So first I just looked at our whole numbers. You'll notice there aren't any whole numbers. They're all 0. So these are all less than 1. So then I went and I underlined tenths all in the same color as well. And what you'll notice is I ordered these greatest to least. So that's what we want to pay attention to. If I asked least to greatest, they'd have to go in the other order. So my biggest value in my tenths, you'll notice I have a 0, a 0, a 2, and a 0. Well, 2 is bigger than all of my zeros, so that makes this the biggest number, even though it has the least number of decimal places up here. So 2 tenths is my largest decimal. Then I went through and I underlined all of our hundredths places. And you'll notice I didn't underline the thousandths because we didn't need to go that far. Basically, we're working our way down. We stopped once we figured it out. But here you'll notice I have all different values. I have a 4, a 2, and a 9. Well, 9 is my largest digit, so 98 thousandths is actually my largest, next largest. 4 is my next biggest number, so 4 100ths would be my next. 2 is smaller than that, so that will end up being my least number. So I've got 27 thousandths being the smallest number. So just pay attention to your place value and you'll be fine. So we're going to go ahead and do this. The big thing to remember here is that when we have negative numbers, remember that everything is reversed. So the larger the digits, the smaller the number is when we're dealing with negative numbers. So let's keep that in mind so we're working our way through this. What you'll notice is that they all start with 4s. So we're going to have to go and we're going to have to look in the tenths place. And I'm going to grab another marker. Thanks for waiting. All right, I want to color code it, so I had to grab a couple more colors here. So let's look at the tenths spot first. What you'll notice in the tenth spot is I have a 1, a 1, a 4, and a 4. Now I'm going from least to greatest. So since these are all negative numbers, the bigger number, the bigger the digit, the smaller the number. So I'm going to look at these ones first because these are bigger. So what you'll notice here is that these are both 4, which means I'm going to then have to go on and look at my next value, my hundredth spot. Well, you'll notice on this one there is no hundredth spot. So what we need to do is we can add a 0 there as a placeholder. The 0 doesn't change the value. So we can add the 0 so we don't get confused. So I have a 4 and a 0. Obviously the 4 is the larger digit, which actually, since again we're dealing with negative numbers, makes it smaller. So my smallest number is this one. And then I would just go ahead and cross them all so you don't get confused. This one also had the 4 tenths, so this is going to be my next smallest, negative 4.4. All right, so now we want to go back and look at our other two because these both had 1 in their tenth spot. So let's look at what's in their hundredth spot. I have a 1 and I have a 4. 4 is the larger digit, which, of course, again, remembering that this is negative numbers makes it a smaller value. So we want to put this up here. And then finally, we'll list our last one. There. So just keep in mind when you have the negatives that you need to flip your thinking and you need to kind of think backwards as you're doing it. All right, on this one you'll notice we have both positive and negative numbers. Now I'm going from least to greatest. So that means the first ones that I want to look at right here are my 2 negative ones because negatives are always smaller than positives. So I know that my smallest numbers are going to be my two negative numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at them. None of these have anything in the, none of these have a whole number value, so we're going to start looking at the tenths. So in the tenths, they both have a 7, so that means I'm going to have to go a little further, look at the hundredth spot. Now again, remember, since we're dealing with negative numbers, we have to reverse our thinking. So 9 is bigger than 0, but that means that this is actually the smaller number because we're dealing with negative numbers. So my smallest number is my negative 79 hundredths. My next one is obviously going to be my next negative number. Then I'm going to take a look at my positive numbers, and now I need to flip my thinking again. I'm dealing with positive numbers, so smaller values are indeed smaller. Again, you'll notice they both have the 7 in the 10th spot, so let's look at the 100th spot. I have a 1 or a 9. 1 is smaller than 9. We're dealing with positives now, so I'm going back to my regular thinking, which means that one's going to come first. 719 thousandths is smaller than 79 hundredths. And finally, my last one winds up there. All right, this one here. In order to order fractions, we need a common denominator to compare them, or we could change them all into decimals to make it easier on ourselves. However, what I'm going to show you on this one is we're going to just use our common sense to put these from smallest to greatest. So the first thing I noticed is I have one negative number. That's obviously going to be my smallest number because negatives are always smaller than positive. Now, if you look here, I have 5/16. That means I have less than 1. Here I have 2 4/5. So which one's smaller? Obviously 5/16 is, leaving 2 as my greatest number. So this is one that we can just look at and use common sense on. Occasionally, you'll find a problem like that. But if not, if it's more confusing than that, you can always convert them into their decimal form to compare them. It just makes it a little bit easier than having to find common denominators. Again, if you're struggling, rewatch it. You can spend a little more time on this video if you need to, and feel free to ask me any questions in email or in class. Have a good night.